Hello, and welcome to the Amongst Romance podcast, your window to everything Italy from an outsider's perspective. Join us each week as we navigate the Italian way of life and all the adventures that come along with it. So I've been looking at TikTok and I've been seeing a lot of different people from Canada, and that reminded me of when we used to live in Canada. And by the time January comes along, it's very cold. You are so tired of winter. We used to do what many other people used to do, which was go down south for like a week, get away from the cold, the dreary gray skies. But I don't think a lot of people, at least in North America, don't think of Europe as a winter destination, especially Italy. So Italy is more of a summer destination. But I think if you come to Italy in January, you're really experiencing a different side of Italy. I think January is probably one of the best months to visit Italy. So I thought maybe we can talk about that today.
Yeah, it's surprisingly pretty mild during this time of year here in Italy, especially in comparison to some of those places that many people visit from. So I think during this time of the year, I'd probably recommend visiting over the high season in the summer.
I like January to begin with, but for me, January, and this is our third January in Italy, for me, January here feels more relaxing. It feels calm. After the craziness of the holidays and New Year's, I think everybody kind of feels a bit worn out. There is a bit of a frenzy at that time. But by the time January comes, things feel a bit more relaxed. And again, when you compare the winter in Canada to winter in Italy, it's a very different winter. Where we live, this winter has been actually pretty good. It's been we had a lot of sunny days. And I think that's the biggest difference from when we lived in Canada, when the winter gets not just the cold and snow, because I think I can deal with that. It's the dark gray days when there's no sun for days. That's what really gets me. So here, especially where we are in Italy, it's been so sunny. And I think I've said to you many times, like, oh my God, I can't believe how sunny and nice it is, even if it's, not like summer weather.
The amount of daylight or even sunlight that you get here is pretty surprising. And that's one of the things that I did not look forward to during winter back home, is basically darkness from morning till night. The number of sunny days are exponentially better than back home. So you get many more days. The weather itself is also very mild in comparison, right? Many times we're probably not even skirting the 0 degree mark most times during the winter here. I'm sure up north, you probably reach that temperature every so often, but as you move your way down south, it gets warmer and warmer.
So I think we can look at the temperatures. I think people don't realize just how different it can be from north to south. Italy is a pretty long country. So you have the north, which is the Dolomites. So obviously it's going to be cooler. I don't think in Europe it gets as cold as it gets in Canada. So you don't get the minus like 20, 30 degrees. I think maybe here you get like minus 10, if that much. I don't think it really gets that cold. But if you're coming to Italy for skiing, for snowboarding, for outdoor activities, the north is a great place for that because it's a lot cooler there. Where we're not technically central, we're more south. And even we live in the mountains. So here it's been, I think the coolest during the day it got to like, it's above 0. So maybe just a little bit under 10 degrees. But on average has been between like 10 to 15 degrees, sometimes warmer. And yes, at night it gets cooler, but I don't think it's ever gone below 0.
Yeah, I've noticed that as you make your way down further south, it gets quite a bit warmer, even from where we're at. If you get to the coastal cities, you'll notice a difference in several degrees. If you make your way all the way down to places like Sicily, you're looking at possibly even 20, 21 degrees Celsius. So it's quite a difference. So it really depends on your appetite on the weather that you're interested in being exposed to. Skiing and snowboarding is probably really good during this time of year. You've skipped over the rush of the winter vacations and people hitting the slopes up north. And I think you'll find that it's quite a bit more quiet down there.
So I think we should talk about the advantages of traveling during January. I think I've already said this before, but January is the least visited month in Italy. It's also considered to be the coldest month in Italy, which again, if you're coming from places like Canada, it's almost like t-shirt weather, right? It's really a very different winter. Because of January being the low season, you really do get some breaks on accommodations, on travel. It's not as expensive as it would be during the high season. You do get some perks of coming in January. Another great reason is if you love Christmas markets, and again, I don't think Italy is as popular for Christmas markets as, let's say, northern countries like Germany, Austria. Some places have them. They're not as good, or just depends where you go. But if you are into the Christmas markets and you don't want to travel during December, which again is high season, you can come at the beginning of January. A lot of these markets in Italy stay open till January 6th. January 6th in Italy is a holiday. It's the Epiphany, and they celebrate with La Befana. Do you want to tell people what La Befana is?
So La Befana is actually kind of funny. It's a witch, or a good witch, that visits you and provides or delivers gifts to children that are either good or bad. The ones that are bad get a piece of coal. It's similar to Santa Claus, but a little more creepy because she doesn't seem as nice as Santa Claus. So that's basically what Befana is.
So when we were in the grocery store the other day at the beginning of January, they have these chocolates and different, think of like a stocking you would have for Christmas. So they have it for Befana. They don't do Christmas stockings here for Christmas, but they do for La Befana. Remember, we were looking at these baskets filled with different candy, and they had these stockings. So you basically buy these stockings, you fill them up with candy. And it was actually kind of interesting to see that everybody was buying them. So it's a thing here. January 6th is the Befana, and that marks the end of the Christmas holidays. Basically, after that, it's all quiet because I guess people are just so worn out from the holidays that they're done.
Now we should discuss winter closures. In many places or spots in Italy, it's the off-season. If you're planning to visit some of the coastal smaller villages, coastal towns, or even, beachy type resort areas, expect to have limited options when it comes to places to shop. Keep that in mind. Always check ahead of time for hours. Call ahead, see what the operating hours are like in advance. Sometimes checking online or even Google Maps isn't the most accurate way to go about it. So definitely call ahead of time to find out the operating hours of business and some of the places you plan to visit.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of places, even like Pompeii, stay open, but they close early. So in a way, it makes sense because, let's say, Pompeii, there is no streetlights. So it gets darker here earlier than it would in the summertime. So you don't want to be stuck in Pompeii on uneven roads with no light. So it closes, let's say, at 5 o'clock as opposed to closing at like 7 or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock during the summertime. So again, you can enjoy the attractions. It's just you have to plan. If you're going for somewhere that's outdoor, do it during the day. If you're going for a museum, reserve it for the evening, but also make sure that the museum stays open because they might just close early.
My favorite subject actually that we can talk about is, the cuisine during this time of year. Winter cuisine is usually, you'll find it's, in Italy in general, it's seasonal. So, every season has its fruits, veggies, certain types of meats. You'll find up north, there's quite a bit more heartier meals available. Of course, you'll find the usual risottos or polentas and roasted meats, but there is a good chance, if you have a plate of pasta, there's some sort of meat used in it. One of the most popular ones in recent memory has been cinghiale, which is wild boar. So that's a super popular one. You'll find that in a lot of pasta dishes. That's also made into sausages and grilled. So you'll find up north, and even in this region, that sort of ingredient is used pretty broadly.
For me, the favorite part about this time of the year is the squashes. They have different types of squash. they have really beautiful kale. And a lot of people might not think of Italian food as like kale being part of it. And I think this is where not knowing too much about local Italian food comes into play, because in North America, we are not taught that Italian food has kale. But in Italy, especially up north, there's a famous soup, the Tuscan kale soup with beans. And they use kale here quite a bit. So in the stores right now, they have really beautiful kale. Like the kale is really impressive here. So I'm personally really into that. But in our area in particular, they also have, I don't know if they're called tangerines. I always call them little oranges. Are they tangerines or are they something else?
I think they're referred to mandarins. It really depends on the size. The mandarins are usually bigger, tangerines are a little bit smaller. I find the smaller ones a little bit more tastier. So that's my preference.
And you see a lot of them, like this is the season for them here in Italy, at least in our part. I think they start like in December, right? So December, January, you see them, and there's a place near us that they're like 99 cents a kilo. Towards the end of the season, when there are less and less available, they go to like 2-3 euro a kilo, which is kind of interesting to see. If you're coming to Italy in January, you might experience foods that you would not normally have available if you come in the summertime, because again, Italians eat seasonal. They eat seasonal dishes and they use seasonal ingredients. So that's another great reason to come, because you can experience dishes that you wouldn't other time of the year.
Now let's talk about the best places one should visit in Italy in the month of January, or even just in general in the winter. The usual spots that everyone goes to, obviously, is, Florence, Rome, Milan, Naples. And you'll find that it'll be much less crowded in those cities. It's definitely a good time to visit larger cities, because you'll find less foot traffic from tourists. So you can actually spend a lot more time doing what you want. If it's shopping that you want to do, or visiting museums, checking out some historical sites. And I think one of the main reasons you would want to consider coming out during this time of year.
Now, I think we should talk about the two cities that are very popular, but you might want to avoid in January, especially this year. So one of them is Rome. And we talked about Rome before. So 2025 is the Jubilee in Rome, which means, in case you're not familiar, it's a Catholic celebration. So it happens every 25 years. There'll be a lot of people coming to Rome in general and Italy, but especially Rome. It's already started, and they were even talking about so many people coming from different places. Everyone's getting sick. They call it the Jubilee flu or something like that. Unless you're coming here for that, I would say skip Rome this year. In general, I would not recommend going to Rome in 2025. But January in general, if it's outside of this, Rome is probably a good place to visit because, again, less crowds. Another place I probably would not recommend going in January is Venice. Venice has what they call Acqua Alta, which translates to high waters. You see pictures of Venice being flooded. So all the water from the canals just kind of floods the streets. Unless you're looking forward to trekking through like Piazza San Marco and other places in your water boots, I just don't think it's a great place to visit. I think there's better times to visit Venice, and I don't think January is one of them.
I guess we should talk about northern Italy. Many people, when they come to Italy, it's usually the usual spots further down south, or even if they do anything northern, it's Florence or Venice. But if you're into winter sports or skiing or snowboarding during the winter, then I'd recommend locations like Trento and the Dolomite. There's some amazing sites to be seen there, great mountains to ski. And if you're not into skiing, there's also the option of visiting some of the towns or adjacent towns in those areas. Do some wine tasting and try out some local cuisines.
I think that's a great idea. And I don't think a lot of people think of Italy as a destination for winter sports. So they do have quite a few ski resort type places. We know about Cortina, which we talked about last time, about Cortina being the place where they hosted the Olympics in the 80s, I think. But they're also hosting it in 2026. We talked about it during our James Bond episode. So again, it's a very popular ski resort town. And if you're looking to enjoy your quintessential European ski or snowboarding adventure, there's plenty of that to do up north. I agree with you. I think there's so many little towns and places in Italy up north that are beautiful throughout the year, but during winter, they do come across as even more spectacular because they have so much more to offer for people who are really into outdoor winter sports.
Outside of winter activities, you can also visit some other locations that are super popular, like Trieste. This is a coastal city on the border of Slovenia. Quite a bit of Slavic and Austro-Hungarian influences. You'll see that reflected in the architecture and the foods there. You'll find some beautiful castles to visit. The Miramar Castle is one to definitely put on your list. And, of course, there's amazing or grand piazzas that are super popular there to visit.
I think Trieste is one of those places that most people would not think of when they think of Italy, right? It's such a different place from, let's say, Rome or Venice or Florence. And I think that's unfortunately a miss if you don't go to places like that. Italy has such a varied and interesting history. And this part of Italy was part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. That's why you have all these really interesting influences. If you're coming to Italy, and it doesn't really have to be in January, I think Trieste is a very good place to explore because it's got so much to offer. And it's really a good way to see a different side of Italy that you would not necessarily think of when you think of Italy.
Yeah, and I think another place that's gaining in popularity and then should be on your list of places to visit while you're in northern Italy is Mantua. Mantua is actually known as a center of Renaissance architecture, and you won't find as many tourists as you would in some of the other cities. So it's definitely one of the spots that I would recommend visiting during this time of year.
I love Mantua. It's really a great place. I think January is a good time to explore different towns. Florence is fantastic, and I say go to Florence. But I think Mantua is a bit of a different take on the Renaissance, as you said. And I think there's a lot of interesting places to see in Mantua that is different from Florence, but still gives you that incredible experience of experiencing Renaissance, but also, as you said, with fewer crowds. And, it's a bit of a different place that not everybody goes to. Now, I think we should go into central Italy. It's really hard to pick these places to recommend because I think Italy has so many things to offer, and really you can't go wrong. But I'm going to start with Abruzzo, which is a region that we're moving to. And we've been there a few times in different months. And honestly, Abruzzo is a very underrated region, and it's perfect for this time of year. You have the Gran Sasso National Park, so you have the snow-capped mountains. So there's a lot of opportunities for winter hiking and winter activities. They also have, it's called Magella National Park, and they all look incredible when you drive through them. So now Abruzzo is also on the coast. So like we said, depends on where you go and depends on the day, but Abruzzo is along the coast. So if you want to just enjoy a nice walk by the beach, there is opportunities to do that in Abruzzo. We are in Chieti, which I think is a great place to explore. But some of the other places I would recommend visiting in Abruzzo is Santo Stefano de Sasagno. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. And Castel del Monte, which again, there's just so many beautiful little villages in Abruzzo that you would just love exploring, especially in January.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our move to Abruzzo to see some of the sites. There's so many places to visit if you're into hiking or maybe even some skiing and snowboarding. But I'm also looking forward to the summer when you can visit Trabacchi there.
People don't really think of that area of Italy as a place to visit in general. If you're coming in January, I think it's a good opportunity to explore some of the other areas of Italy. We talked about Abruzzo as a whole. We also have places like Orvieto, which is a famous town in Umbria, which people have gone to, but again, it's more of like a summer destination. You have Pistoia, which again is a beautiful town that gets overshadowed by Florence. So there's lots of little towns full of medieval architecture, beautiful churches and piazzas, and they have great food that you can just go and explore. The advantage of coming in January is that there are just fewer people. You'll still have people. If you go to touristy places, you'll still have people there. Plus, you have the locals who live there. But it will not be as overrun as it is during the summertime. Plus, I think the weather's a bit more pleasant. The winter in Italy is not even close to what it is in Canada. If you're coming from Australia, maybe it's different because it's summer for you there. But honestly, I think you can't really go wrong with any place in Italy.
Now we can move over to our neck of the woods here, which is southern Italy. There's so many options when it comes to southern Italy. Of course, one of our favorite places, and a spot that we just recently went to visit several weeks ago, was the Pompeii Archaeological Park. So in January, you wouldn't expect too much of a crowd. I've experienced much larger crowds than what we've seen on our visit several weeks ago. If it's on your list, it's definitely a stop you have to make. You can walk through many of the ancient streets and take a look at many of the villas that have been discovered there. It is something that you have to experience at least once in your life.
Yeah, I think Pompeii is something that most people don't really think of as visiting, but January, I think, was perfect. We went on the first Sunday of the month, which in Italy, it's free. The day we went was like 15 degrees. It was really warm. And again, you're walking around. It's a big city, so you do a lot of walking. I think I said to you, it's really warm. It's about 15 degrees. You don't have to bring a heavy coat. You're walking around, not sweating in the heat of the summer. And there were quite a few people still there. I think it was because we went on the free day. You get groups, you get people coming to see it. But it was still not that bad. It wasn't as crowded as I assume it is in August. So again, if you're coming to this part of Italy, Pompeii is a great option for January because it stays open all year round. It might close a bit earlier, but it's still a good place to go. Now, we also talked about Naples in the past. And again, Naples is great. I was in Naples last January and it was like 18 degrees. I had my jacket off because it was really so warm. And you could see who is a tourist and who isn't, because Italians, they tend to wear their puffy jackets, hats and gloves. And whoever is not Italian, they come from somewhere else. You see them walking in t-shirts, honestly, because it's so warm. This is a great time to come to places like Pompeii, Naples, even Amalfi Coast. You will find that it's a lot less crowded. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, I think that's definitely our experience, at least with Pompeii. Since we've been there so many times, it was much less crowded this time around. Yeah, January is definitely a great time to visit Amalfi. I'd have to agree on that one because you'll avoid all that traffic and won't have to suffer through those hair-raising curves with all the other cars coming the opposite end of you there.
Now, for Amalfi Coast, you're not going to get like the beach experience. You can still go on the beach. It's just, you probably won't be able to go in the water. It might be a bit cool, but people live on the Amalfi Coast. So it's not like it's a deserted town and there's no one there. You might have a bit, fewer hotels open or fewer restaurants, depends on where you are, but the locals still live there. So it's a great opportunity to experience the coast without all the tourists. I would say if you're coming to Italy in January, Amalfi Coast is definitely a good place to explore.
Now, my next favorite place in southern Italy is Matera. We've spoken at length about Matera in our James Bond episode, but if you're not familiar, it's very well known for its ancient cave dwellings, where up until several decades ago, they were populated by local people. So it's actually pretty cool to visit, just to see the intricate network of caves. But there is so much more to see. It's considered one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and it's definitely a place you want to spend some time checking out.
And we happened to visit Matera twice, and one of those times was actually in January. We went at the beginning of January, and I think one day when we actually did the hike was like 15 degrees. So again, you have a lot of sunshine, still very nice weather. I thought there were still quite a few people, but the amount we saw in January would not be even close to the amount of people that would probably come in the summertime. So again, I think Matera is a great place for January if you're thinking of coming down to this part of Italy and you're not sure what to do.
Moving to the Puglia region, one of the other places that I really enjoyed and wished I spent more time at was Bari. It's actually one of the nicest cities I've seen in Italy when it comes to just vibrancy and historic charm. It's super lively when we went. The atmosphere is, a bit different compared to other southern Italian cities, but I thought it was really nice. What did you think?
I was actually very surprised by Bari because we didn't really know too much about it. It's a big city, so it has lots of stuff to offer, visitors. But I really liked the architecture. I liked the vibe. People were really nice. And again, Bari is probably very underrated. Not too many people go there. Puglia in general is not as visited, although I think that might be changing. I don't necessarily think Puglia is a great place to explore in January. There's just not much going on there. But Bari is a big city. It's the biggest city in Puglia. So you'll have a lot more to see and do in Bari. And again, the weather's a lot better there. I would definitely recommend Bari. I think we should go back sometime soon to explore.
I'd have to agree. Yeah, it's going to be one of those places we'd have to spend a good week exploring.
Another place that I think most people don't really think of is Sicily. Now, I'm going to argue that Sicily is probably one of the best destinations in Italy year-round because you have so many different things to do. When you think of Sicily, you think it's further down south, it's warmer, and that's it. So yeah, it's a bit warmer. The winter in Sicily is even more mild. But you also get snow in Sicily, which I think most people don't really think about. The island is very diverse. We have the beaches, the beautiful Baroque towns, the seaside resorts. But in the middle, you also get a lot of mountains. So where Mount Etna is and all around that area, they do get snow. If you're looking for some outdoor hiking or winter activities, Sicily is a great destination to explore too, especially in January.
The weather will be pretty favorable at this time of year for Sicily, so I wouldn't think twice about visiting during this time.
I think Sicily is such a great destination. We watched the show based in Sicily, and they have these scenes where it's technically maybe winter, but they still go swimming in the ocean, which is kind of crazy for us. So if you're looking at places like Palermo, like Trapani, they are not as cold. Those places don't get snow. You'll get snow in the center of the island, but you really don't get that on the coast. I think that offers the best of the both worlds. You get that sort of mild weather when you can still go for like a walk on the beach, have an outdoor patio dinner, but then you can go into the mountains hiking or enjoy some snow. It really delivers on every single level.
That's the thing with Italy in general. You'll find such varying differences in the same region, great weather on one end, and then being able to go up in the center of that region and hit the mountains and do some skiing if you want, or trekking. So that's the beauty. There's so many options available to you.
January is one of my favorite months. And I think coming to Italy in January really opens you up to a different experience. We already talked about the different food that's available, the activities. January feels more relaxed. For me, January feels very quiet, very sort of laid back, and you don't get that. I mean, Italians are not really into hustle and bustle, but you do get that from the tourists when they come. In January, it just feels a bit calmer. It feels a bit more relaxed.
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely the feeling I get during this time of year. It's pretty laid back, a lot less hectic in comparison to coming during the summertime. Great time to visit if you don't like the big crowds.
Now, the part of that I don't like so much about January is that the scenery, at least where we are, there are some places where we don't really have the change like we do in Canada. So in the fall, the leaves don't really change colors. It's just going to go brown and fall off and there's nothing there. So right now in some parts of where we are, it feels a bit brown, right? You get that sort of just blah, but you get the sunshine. So you still get that sort of better feeling. Like in Toronto, when we left there, it was like you get that blah feeling, but there's no sunshine. There is cold. There is no greenery. Whereas here, even though the mountains don't feel green, you still have green grass. There's things blooming outside, which I think adds a bit to the experience. When we drove to Abruzzo and through different parts of Italy, it feels greener because you have a lot of olive groves, and olive groves don't lose leaves. So you have a lot more greenery and sunshine. I just think it makes it a bit of a more interesting experience. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think it's a totally different feeling in comparison to back home. The amount of sunshine you get is exponentially more than we're used to. You feel much better when it comes to just during the winter season here. Of course, the warmer weather helps, but the amount of sunlight or just the lack of cloudiness each day is pretty nice to get used to.
And I think that's why it doesn't really feel like winter here, because we don't have the snow as much, right? Where we are right now, it snows maybe once a year, and it did like maybe a week ago, and it snowed for a few hours. When I got up in the morning to walk the dog, there was snow, but by noon it was gone. So it doesn't really feel like winter the way it did in Canada. So I would say if you're looking to come to Italy and you're thinking, I don't want to come during the busy season, I really think you should consider January. I think it's a great time to visit.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on those points. And I hope listeners are interested in coming during this time of year. You'll be pleasantly surprised and rewarded, because being able to take your time to visit many of the sites you're interested in is actually pretty rewarding. You'll be able to spend as much time or however little time that you want in wherever you want to visit. So I think it's a good time to visit.
With that, I hope we convinced you to come to Italy in January, and I honestly think you're going to love it.